Introducing Addy, a game-changing AI maintenance bot for property management. Addy can, in any language, triage and data capture every maintenance issue, with full voice version coming soon. Addy has learned from over 850,000 reactive maintenance issues carried out by AddyUvo, the leading maintenance call handling service. To sign up for updates and our next testing cohort, go to adiuvo.org.uk/ADI.
Welcome back to season 12 of the Propcast. I'm your host, Louisa Dickins, and this season we'll be discussing all things smart buildings and the digital future. This week, I spoke to Dr. Ken Dooley, the Chief Product Officer at Haltian and Professor of Practice in Smart Buildings, Aalto University, and the famous Dangerous Dan Drogman, CEO of Smart Spaces, where we spoke about how we can make smart and empathetic buildings. It's fair to say that we covered a lot in this episode, discussing important and delicate topics such as gender bias, neurodiversity, and tokenisation within the office space. It was interesting to hear that people perform cognitively worse at colder 21 degrees and 21 degrees, showing the importance of having a building that is designed for employees. We all want to get the most out of our employees, ensuring we create the best environment for them can help achieve optimal productivity and employee satisfaction, and hopefully help with retention. After speaking with Ken and Dan, it's clear that hotelification of offices has already happened. And then to get people back to the office, you must make the office environment better than home. This episode of the podcast shares what employees want out of an office, such as coffee, lunch, gym, events, and a data-driven design can really help create that incredible space. So I hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. And thanks again for tuning in. Hi everyone and welcome to the Propcast. So today we have a very special episode and we're going to be getting a little bit personal with buildings. And the topic today is how we can make smart and empathetic buildings. And today we have Dr. Ken Dooley, who is a professor of practice in smart buildings at Aalto University. I think I pronounced that right. I'm hoping so. If not, feel free to correct me later, Ken. And he's also the Chief Product Officer at Haltian. And we also have Dangerous Dan Drogman, who is a fellow Londoner who I've known for a long time since setting up LMRE, joining us, who is the CEO of Smart Spaces. So welcome to the show, Ken and Dan.
Thank you. And hey, I've been thinking about this conversation for a few weeks now, so super excited to get started.
Yeah, no, thanks, Lou. Hi, Ken. Good to see you again.
Awesome. So to sum up what we're going to be talking about, everyone who is listening in, whether it's the morning or the evening for you, Ken's going to be talking to us how Haltian can combine guaranteeing superb end user and experience while also delivering the key data for operational excellence. And Dan's going to be sharing how his smart building OS platform and app delivers two core functions. So one of them is obviously simplifying day-to-day operational management of buildings, boost energy efficiency, save costs, and an intuitive smartphone-based app for people to use for building entry, to book desks, meeting rooms, parking, and various other things. But Dan will be going into a little bit more himself later on in the show. Both our guests have years of experience in the smart building space, so they're going to be sharing trends and changes they've seen, how buildings are becoming more empathetic, and how they can cater to different genders, I guess, to different mindsets, different communities, different places, different everything. The world we're living in is changing every single day as we understand it more and more. It's clear how we operate, use, and understand buildings, why people go back to the office, which is what a lot of building operators, owners are all looking at now globally. And they're going to be digging into a bit more about what does this new tech savvy generation, what are they looking for when it comes to buildings? I like to think I'm fairly tech savvy, and what I look for when I first went into the workforce is slightly different now. So I'm really interested to hearing what they both have to say. As innovation has been increasing, and I guess has been changing, there's still the age-old question: what innovation is good? Like what do the C-suite in the real estate world, what do they need to be looking at to really drive value? So that Ken and Dan will be touching upon that. And lastly, we're going to be finishing off with basically how are we even going to get there? What is the how are we going to make these buildings more sustainable? Are we going to be using it, getting it there through like various sort of different technologies? Is it going to be one like overarching big sort of tech business? Is it going to be the real estate world sort of building their technology themselves? Who knows? But we've got Ken and Dan to sort of discuss these topics. So enough from me. I'm delighted yet again to have Ken and Dan on the show. So let's get started. We'll start with Ken. So when I first spoke to Ken, I was slightly surprised by his accent. Obviously, Ken is a bit of an, I guess, isn't a name you probably hear a lot in sort of Helsinki, but he lives in Helsinki now. And I wanted to find out a little bit more about your journey, an Irishman's journey to Helsinki, and obviously Haltian.
Yeah, so I've been actually over here about 15 years, which is a huge stretch of time. I did 5 years in London before that, actually working in consulting engineering around energy building services. We like to think we were architectural engineers back in the day, but I think we just said that to girls in bars. I think we were literally building services engineers. And then I've been over here working for 15 years, a long time in consulting on sustainability. And I picked up over here a doctorate in sustainability at the same time. And then around that time, when I was running a consultancy team, I was the world's worst line manager ever because I was 4 years, half my week doing a doctorate. And I ended up in tech as an enabler to make buildings better, to make buildings more sustainable. And I'm still here having fun, enjoying the work-life balance. And it's a good place to have 3 kids under 12, for example.
Wow. And what about, whilst we're like on you, talk us through like Haltian, like for the audience that doesn't know, obviously it's sort of growing quite a lot. We'll talk about the raise in a bit, but what's the product? Where are you operating? Who are a few of your clients?
Yeah, so Haltian then is a kind of grown-up IoT company, one of the IoT companies that have really shown they can do all of the end-to-end elements. So the original, 10 years old, originally Nokia mobile phone gurus from Oulu, which is in the northern side of Finland. I'm based in Helsinki. And the idea there was that when they weren't building mobile phones anymore, the best product designers turned their heads to, okay, what can we do with IoT? And they were doing a lot of design for hire. So one of the huge success stories back in the day was the Oura ring, the health ring. So that's designed by the Haltian guys. And now for the last number of years, we've had things like presence sensors, air sensors, leak detection in buildings. And then Haltian bought empathic building just about 3 years ago as a kind of software to have as a UI, as a front end for the hardware. The software empathic building, actually, when I joined 3 years ago, when it was bought, actually comes from a really large kind of 30,000 euro Nordics software, a digital services company who designed it for themselves, but then they merged with another company and they sold the software because it was too baby. And with the merger, so we ended up inheriting it. And then we have this building industry software, but came from digital services companies. So it came from game designers and software designers who designed an app for their office. So it hasn't come from legacy real estate architecture. It's come from clever people who were frustrated and who had software design skills. So that's a little bit of a unique history that it came from that perspective.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And what about also for those listening in, the sort of Nordic PropTech scene is really popping. Like you should check out sort of PropTech Finland as well. I think there's like over 100 technology companies. There's other businesses I spoke about, like Hostway, which raised, I think, 170 million. There's like another one, I think, like Rive, I think it's called Rive, it raised 23. Like if you are looking at growth within, say, the Nordics, that region, there's some great capital out there. There's some incredible talent. And then also, if you are in the real estate space looking to try new technologies, just check them out and have a chat with anyone who's involved in PropTech Finland. So that's just like a bit of my knowledge that I've been exploring recently. But Dan, let's get you involved. First of all, introduce yourself, but also I'd love to hear a bit more about the story, how you guys know each other, because it's all about community in this world, and the audience would love to know.
No, brilliant. No, thanks, Lou. So I'm Dan Drogman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Smart Spaces, a business I founded with my brother. The business, believe it or not, is 13 years old now, which is absolutely crazy. Can't believe how quick that's gone. And in the early days, we were coders for hire. So me and my brother would write software solutions, and our first client was our landlord. So we were building meeting room solutions, billing, a whole host of technology to enable us to be more efficient and also to cover the rent, which then enabled us to then make our first employee. And once we got our first employee, we then got a great contract building MarriottMeetingRooms.com. So a baptism of fire in complex, multilingual, multi-location meeting room bookings where the likes of Microsoft would book their entire calendar up front. So essentially, if they're going to do a series of events in a year, they would book it all through our system at the beginning of the year, and it'd do all the budgetary constraints. And building that project, Marriott had aspirations for smart. So they got us into Apple. We were very early into iBeacon technology to bring up the passes on your phone when you go into the building and really streamline the user experience. So we built that system, which was a really successful project, and we learned a lot during that time. And at that time, obviously, we're still working on the office product, which we worked on for our landlord, and thought, hang on, there's a lot we can take from the hotel industry in terms of the way they operate. And we were really focused on the technology aspect. But yeah, certainly, I think the property industry was also looking at the operational aspect of delivering, fantastic customer service. And so that was the genesis of Smart Spaces. At that point, we thought, hang on, we could provide a hotelification platform for offices. And that was music to the ears of a lot of the early clients we spoke to. And we built out our Smart Spaces app, which was all about facilitating access to all the services a building provides, and especially a campus. Our first project was a campus. Obviously, we know business parks need to entice people out of town centres, out of cities, so they provide far more amenity. But the landlord needs a way to wrap that up amenity in a way that it can be delivered efficiently. Actually, a lot of the time it's an awareness piece. You've got to find the amenity and know the amenity's there. Sometimes things get invested in buildings and people don't even know there's a fantastic cycle park because it's not shown to them on an app or in the advertising within the building. So it's all about wrapping these services up, but then just as important, measuring them. Which ones actually get used? Which ones do we get a return on investment? And that was the start. And now, very proud to say, we're deployed in over 60 million square feet in 26 countries. We're fast approaching 60 headcount. And Ken, we met Ken at WorkTech and had a really good discussion. Like, his passion for smart buildings and making the workplace as efficient as possible might even exceed mine. I think I'd like to get a bit fired up and get very passionate about it, but I felt that similar energy in Ken, so we hit it off. Probably sunk a few pints as well, and then got the pleasure of seeing him at ISE as well, out in Barcelona, where we were both on stage discussing the merits of smart buildings. And actually, really, what I think we're doing now is sort of positioning how far, like, the UK is ahead of a lot of the rest of the world in terms of the quality of buildings and quality of software we're delivering.
Interesting. Well, we're going to go into a bit about the trends and changes you guys have seen. To sort of big Dan and Smart Spaces up, and those who are listening, definitely check out the products. Dan and I did the podcast, I think it might have been one of my first seasons, it's been season 12 now, and it was in January 2021. Now, obviously, we're halfway through 2023. And I met Dan talking with brothers through my brother, Ben Dickins, who was using Smart Spaces in one of his business parks, I think is how we originally got to know each other. But talking about further growth Dan's had, he hasn't gone into a bit more about his clients. Obviously, Great Port in the States was one of the ones where they rolled out their solution throughout their offices in London. But you recently started working with Heinz, with Helical. You obviously mentioned about Marriott, but you're now working with Santander. So it just shows how important this solution is to different sort of assets as well, and different industries. So I just wanted to say congratulations to Dan. Now, going back to Ken, obviously we've spoken about the success stories of Smart Spaces. Haltian has obviously had a huge amount of success. You've been growing hugely in the German market. I think it was early this year, you guys raised 22 million to accelerate that growth journey. Is this, obviously there's a lot more money coming into this space. I know it's been slightly a choppy economy recently, but it does show with good products, there's still investment going and there's still an appetite to I guess, adopt these technologies. You mentioned the UK is now ahead. There's obviously been massive growth in sort of in Europe as well. Why do you think that is, Ken? Let's go back into some trends and changes you've seen, and I guess that will tie in quite nicely to what Haltian's plans are with that cash injection.
Yeah, so I guess from our perspective, IoT, still 10 years ago was what would you say, almost like a garage industry, with startups kind of really just playing with, okay, what can we build and what use cases can we find? And I think now Haltian is one of those people that's really, we have 250,000 devices, IoT devices out in the market. So the fact that actually the robustness and the cloud and every single small element is there, it's now a matter of, we've proven that we have, large energy companies or telecommunications companies that are really used to kind of really, really robust products, because if they go down, it's costing them millions per minute. And now we have a huge portfolio of sites in the US, because one massive logistics company that no one has ever heard of has us in thousands of sites. And their customer journey with us is really typical. They kind of go, hey, can you give us some leak detection? We knock it out of the park with something as unsexy as leak detection. And then they say, hey, you guys do exactly as you promised. Not many people, or almost no one else, does from an IoT perspective, about like really, really scaling out of the box. What else can you do? This is what's coming next. So it's that trust and that ability to scale, and having kind of wireless gateways, and really just having those really easy to deploy, really highly accurate, really highly robust IoT devices, that then is the starting point for everything. So that's where we're going. So then US market's a big push, and then actually ESG is then a big push. Which is music to my ears. I used to be a sustainability consultant for many, many, many years, and that's what my doctorate is in. So the past catches up on you as well if we're planning now that we are planning a big ESG push as well.
And I guess this tying into our next big topic, and I'm conscious of time, and the audience knows who I listen to this, we have about sort of half an hour. What I was so excited to talk about in this podcast was, when Ken and I first hopped on a call, we were talking about some fairly big topics, the big statements which we sort of see. We went into a lot. And one of the questions I want to go into is there gender bias in sort of smart buildings? I mean, personally, for me, as I think a lot of people who listen or have met me, I spend my life in conference centres, and I am forever absolutely bloody freezing. I know in the office I'm looking around now, and there's everyone sort of battling who can get to the thermostat, and it's forever changing. Now, whether I'd say that's a complete gender bias, I feel like we just haven't really got to the point of having a proper sort of smart building and making it balanced. But Ken, when we were talking about it, you were talking about the impact of office design. Is it, whether it was previously sort of catered to men, what can be done to sort of change, like different facilities? How can we solve the challenges faced by all sorts of people in the office? Like, what's being changed at the moment? Is there gender bias? You're the doctorate here, so over to you.
Yeah, so I think, and Dan will know this as well, because it touches on, those best possible workplaces. I think we have been looking at speaking to lots of customers and thinking about technology in a really light touch way, and really talking about neurodiversity and thinking, okay, is neurodiversity, or is personalization for everyone's individual preferences? It sounds expensive to me, but I think actually acknowledging some of the things that we've seen and that research backs up, and actually coming up with really practical step-by-step ways to really acknowledge and actually improve are some of the things that we've been talking about. And shout out to Elizabeth Nelson as well, my co-conspirator, who's a part of the Smart Building Collective in Amsterdam, who's written a book called Healthy Workplace. But we've been talking about things like, okay, yes, there is a gender bias. Yes, there's a brilliant article called Battle for the Thermostat that really talks about female employees in office buildings would prefer maybe 2 degrees warmer, that the 21 degree standard has come from the 70s in the UK. And I guess it was, a middle-aged white man like myself who pulled that out of the air. And the actual statement of the study is saying that that people perform cognitively less well, or women do, at that colder 21 degree than they do at 23. So, we're not just making you cold. Elizabeth would say we're making you stupider as well, so I guess coming back to the practicality of it is, we were kind of thinking, could we have some zones? Could we have some floors? Could we have some working areas that have, you know, a door in between them so that it's thermodynamically warmer? And then exactly what Dan said, which is, I think, is coming back to what we say, that, you know, just like Dan's perspective, you offer the services, you communicate the service exists, like you just said, Dan, and then you measure if it's popular. So we don't have to cover the building in 23 degrees rooms. We just need to create a few of them or open office areas that are a bit warmer. We communicate that they exist, we tell people why they exist, and we measure if they're popular. And I hope if you're a leader and you have half of your team, you know, who are female or more, then you're spending at least half of your time in those warmer spaces. So it's just that Dan knows this really well, and Smart Space have been really good at this. We allow the organization to create beautiful spaces. We communicate that they exist. We put a little bit of technology in, not just to measure after the fact if it's popular or not, but it tells Louisa and her team if there's space to sit today in that warmer area. Build it, communicate it exists, and measure if it's popular enough. And if it is popular, we'll put in more. And I think if we can tackle neurodiversity that way, then that's a really practical and hopefully, you know, forward-looking way to raise these uncomfortable questions. And I say that as the dad of my firstborn is a girl and changed my perspective on the world a long time ago. And these things are kind of really important.
And Dan, is there anything you want to sort of share or add on to what Ken just said?
Yeah, certainly. Actually, my firstborn is a daughter as well. So yeah, certainly it's opened my mind. You want to create the future workplace where, you know, everyone wants to work. Our purpose at Smart Spaces is optimizing environments for the people on the planet. And our strap line is creating the ultimate user experience for the built environment. And really what that comes down to is offering people personalization. Now, we don't collect gender data. All we really collect in terms of data, personal data, is an email address for the person registering. But what we do want to have access to our platform is overlaid on our desk booking plan. We show how quiet a zone is, what the temperature of a zone is. Some of our more forward-thinking clients will actually run temperature zones. Not much variance. So we're only really seeing at best 20 to 22. We also provide control in our app to move the deadband as well for certain zones. So if you book the meeting room you're in today, you would have control of your space, Louisa. So you would be able to actually adjust that temperature down and make yourself more comfortable. And really, I think on the neurodiversity front, it's more about the quiet spaces we've found. And like with our software development team, they will work in the dark. Like for this podcast, I've just asked them, could they brighten the lights out there a little bit? Because they will work in darkness if they can. They all prefer the dark theme, the nighttime theme. So Slack is all black. We have black Outlook. You know, it's literally, they like the darker environment. And they do the same in our mode, the theme in our app. And so certainly we like to provide that, but it is a balance. So we do run these zones across the floor plate and give people choice. And that's the key. And we do measure, you know, set point changes to understand whether actually we should start to modify the startup set point to a new temperature, because at the moment someone walks in, they're changing it anyway. And then sort of design the HVAC systems around that to actually make sure that the building can still save energy, meeting the user's requirements.
Amazing. Yeah, I think when Ken and I were talking, people with like different thoughts, like ADHD, was now like talking about it a lot more sort of openly. I think a lot of people getting more diagnosed. It's just an example of a mental health. I was about to say problem. I guess you can use it as a superpower, but people more aware of it. And Ken, you were talking about the benefits of having white noise and how to get people to concentrate. I mean, I think I run a recruitment business. Like, I'm pretty sure most people in my team have like dyslexia. We have quite a few people with sort of ADHD. I think it's just, and it's like, how can we create the right environments to get the most out of them, but obviously so they want to come into the office, and that's what.
Hi, I'm Xander Geronimos, Head of Business Development and Strategic Partnerships at MetaProp, the New York-based venture capital firm that has been at the forefront of the PropTech industry since 2015. In early September, we will launch the Global PropTech Confidence Index, sponsored by PwC, which serves as a biannual barometer for the health of the real estate technology industry. MetaProp also publishes a monthly newsletter that covers all things PropTech, from industry news, upcoming events, recent financings, job spotlights, and more. Subscribe at the footer of our website, metaprop.vc.
everyone is trying to work out, how do you get people back into the office to create this sort of culture and get the most out of employees for their careers and obviously for your business too? Again, is there anything you want to share more about that?
Yeah, so I think so. Our research team with Laura and Kia that we have in the university are really working on this, and we also have a researcher who's been diagnosed as having ADHD and on the Asperger's spectrum, and is really positive about sharing that. And I think what we're trying to say here as well is that there is a simple pathway to organizations tackling this. So, we talk well about white noise and ADHD, and the problem are the spikes in noise. It's someone slamming a door, it's someone shouting goodbye as they leave a meeting room and out in the office space. And the practical steps for organizations to tackle this is, there's 20 open office areas, and someone says, yeah, we stuck some white noise on that place on the 5th floor, and it's tokenism. It's literally tokenism to have one open office area with white noise, but then it's overly expensive to actually cover the whole building in white noise. The same with the warmer areas, the same with anything around these topics. But what we're trying to say is that there is this ability with data-driven design, even in the area of neurodiversity, that we create these spaces, we create them in an accessible place, we communicate they exist, and then we find the equilibrium or the sweet spot between, if you do have 20 open office areas, is it one per floor that has white noise? Is it every second one? And we're giving people, definitely with what we're talking about with customers and empathic building, that route to actually approaching these problems in a not fully prohibitive, overly expensive way, but also avoiding tokenism. And it's creating dialogues as well. And it's exactly like Dan said about the business parks that have all these wonderful services. We're creating them, we're telling people they exist, and then we're monitoring what they want more of and what they want less of. And it's too old-fashioned to ask feedback forms. We want to do it with data. We want to do it with anonymous data.
Yeah, I guess talking about it. So loads of our audience listening in, they want to hear from you guys about what do people want now? Like I spoke about the new tech savvy workforce, so much stuff has changed. It's been obviously the great resignation. Obviously, I run a recruitment business, and the type of people we speak to, there's people been in working for ages who are used to being in the office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. There's been so many different sort of tech companies, new businesses coming out of it. What do people want? It must completely change depending, what geography you're in, what age you are, what circumstances, what sort of job you mentioned. Dan, your engineers love sitting in pitch black, and good for them. My recruiters need bright lights and a bit of like jazz going on or something like that. So what have you guys seen? Like Dan, maybe share with us a bit more about how long do you say you've been doing? 15 years, is it?
Yeah, coming up to that, yeah. So, what we've seen over that time, certainly the hotelification of offices for sure. Yeah, some of our latest projects are breathtaking in terms of the quality of space. We mentioned the Grain House with Heinz. Certainly, I'm thinking of applying for a job there, I think, based on how nice their office is. But yeah, I think it's got to be better than home. How do you make it better than home? I think, the fit out is probably the easier one because you tend to have a better space, but you need those quiet spaces because you get the ability to concentrate at home. The coffee needs to be a lot better. And so we see coffee as one of the most popular amenities in our app. Some of our clients actually give you £10 when you go to the office. When you badge in with the Smart Spaces app, £10 is put onto your balance to spend in the cafe within the building. You have to spend it that day. It doesn't accrue, so you can't just save up and then take all your friends to the bar on the Friday. And so it's a great way to attract people back to the office because it's helping, because there is going to be a spend for the commute for a lot of people. And so it's a nice way to attract them back. But it's also a nice way to measure it as well. That's a really good scheme that we've found really popular. And I think through that, when you have a really good desk booking system and you can see when your colleagues are in on which days and which zones they have and the availability, we definitely get that sort of Sunday night peak where first person books and then quickly after other people book because they want to be with that person for that day. And we get these cluster patterns, like booking patterns. And I think that's great. I think the biggest challenge, of course, is getting that spread evenly across the week. We certainly got the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday issue across most of our buildings. Some clients are quite tough and they'll make you badge in on a Monday. They're forcing people back. But others, are much softer. And they're the ones who are really invested in things like the £10 credit to attract people back to the office.
Yeah. Can you raise your eyebrows when Dan said the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday issue and some clients getting back on a Monday? We've literally at LMRE, we're really trying to like be seen. Well, good news for those who are looking at a job or hiring. We've seen the market pick up, basically roles and activity pick up by 50% in the last 6 weeks. So obviously I'm very happy about that. But equally, I now need my team buddy in front of me delivering and working with clients. We're now making them come in. I think I need to get this right. And I do it as well because you've got to lead by example. But I'm in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those who aren't performing have to also come in on a Thursday. Now, that's not for everyone, but like it's a very good way of how we've been measuring activity and also people getting more value out of us. But Ken, like, I don't know if you think that is the right thing or what you've seen in terms of trends and what's worked in the office space for you.
Yeah, I've seen a brilliant trend recently. I was actually in Dublin and I popped in to see a potential customer on my holidays, but I went to see Flutter, who actually have Paddy Power and Sky Bet and Betfair and these guys, and they have so many different brands and products. And so many different launches around Champions League or the women's World Cup, that they actually now have their events team and their workplace team kind of really merged. So there's always things happening in their beautiful office, which also has a kind of sports theme. And there was games on in a kind of sports auditorium central kind of atrium when I was there. So that is a really cool trend that they have this kind of surprise and delight perspective. Kind of cool shout out to them, but they were really kind of building in events. So it's a launch of something gets people excited and something new is coming. So this idea of really understanding the mindset of events and how to get bums on seats and how to kind of get people to turn up. And, you know, when you release information and what information you release and if there's a DJ or whatever it is, really kind of fun to see and learn more from them, that merging of workplace, real estate and events. So that was something that I really want to hear more about from them.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Ken. Interestingly, what we've found is, so pre-COVID, the events part of our application was used very heavily, but the quality of events wasn't great. You know, the person coming to give the talk was pretty average, and this is probably a cost-based decision. And now, post-COVID, I'd say maybe the same volume of events, maybe slightly less, but the quality is really increased. And so much so, some of our customers are now charging for attendance for the event, which is, you know, quite brave, but they want to get a better quality speaker. And it's obviously subsidized, but that is getting people back. Because if, you know, you can get Simon Sinek to come in and give you a talk in your building, you're going to have 100% occupancy on that day. Or Ken Dooley, actually. If Ken Dooley's coming up.
I'm there.
Yeah, people be crowd surfing. There'll be queues out the door to hear Ken speak. What about, okay, right, I'm conscious of time and we've got a couple more questions I want to sort of get through. We have two more. So Ken, obviously you mentioned, you've obviously done the consulting, you've done the sustainability thing, you've done product thing, but you will have also done the innovation role. Obviously the role of an innovation person changes a lot. But if you were back in the innovation role, so say for these innovation heads of these C-suite of the big investment managers, the owners, operators, what would you recommend to them? What do you think they need to sort of hone in on when it comes down to technology?
This is a favorite topic. I think I have goosebumps. I think I see every holy grail technology, like, you know, that robot that turns off, the robot control person that reads all the data and turns off the lights. Somebody talked about one of these today as well. Maybe a desk allocation robot that, you know, Dan comes in and they say, Dan, because of all your contacts, you need to come in Tuesday and Thursday and we're booking this desk for you. I think all the kind of silly, dream technologies, I almost think there's like five steps. There's the legacy companies who are promising it but are too big and too boring to do it. There's level 3 and 4, which I don't know what companies are at. I think we might be at. And then there's this company that is promising all of this stuff right now that actually I don't trust at all. So I think if we're going after these huge topics that like even, you know, digital twins and energy simulations with twins, all the stuff we've been talking about for 10 years, I think the people who say they can do it now, get rid of them. The people who have been talking about it for 10 years and moving nowhere, get rid of them. And the people who have some green shoots and who aren't saying they can do everything, but have proven I would say like Dan and ourselves have proven that they are in this space, that they can do many things, and they're adjacent or rubbing up against those big things. I think that's where the kind of sure bet is. So stay away from the Siemens and the Honeywells, and stay away from the startup who you might get a lot of attention for 50,000 euros, or the startup that's promising the world. And there's a sweet spot of competence, energy, disruptive energy, and ability in there in between. And that's something I'm really passionate about. And I'm more and more convinced as the years go on.
And that's the strap, I guess, both you say your Haltian and Smart Spaces to sort of collaborate and sort of give an all-round better product and value for the customer. Okay. Dan, I presume you would agree with that.
110%. Yeah, great, Ken. Love it. I think it's really tangible what we do. It's really tangible. And so most of our sales will be around giving people tours of buildings and go and meet our customers, because they can really explain the merits and benefits. And then the customer sees it real in a building, tangible, delivered, and that gives them the confidence. And what's really nice, no two clients are the same. We run one source code in Smart Spaces. Every single client is running on the same source code, but it's got a configuration applied to it. And no two are configured the same. Obviously, when you've got a big client with a portfolio of properties, they will configure them all the same, which I think works for them. But property to property, it's very different. And so it's nice, because that means the brands can really, stand out from each other. And when you go in to see them, you can see, you can make an informed decision on which one you would like to work in terms of a new office for your company. So, I totally agree with that. The Smart Spaces is hardware agnostic. We don't develop any hardware. So the Haltian sensors are fantastic for our business because we can bring their data directly into our platform and connect it to other systems like access control, lighting control, and it provides a very holistic end user product. And so I think that's where innovation comes into our business, because we lean on companies like Ken, who are developing, class-leading IoT infrastructure and sensors that make us, as cutting edge, because we can take the benefits of what they can provide in a sensor and deploy it across our current real estate of clients.
Amazing. All about collaboration. And Ken has one more thing to add.
Yeah, and I'd love to get home. I hope my phone is going to ring now from Siemens and Honeywell and Schneider, because we would love to work with them. And I think they have everything they need and that the market needs. And we can just sprinkle a little bit of fairy dust with some IoT and some energy. And I'm hoping they're going to give me a call right now. I'm very easily findable on the internet.
I love that. We'll be sharing their contact details after the show. Right. Final question is obviously the sustainability side. Will Smart Building Solutions, so your product combined, are they going to get us to hitting the sustainability development goals? We've got COP28, that's like a few months away. That's going to be interesting. Is technology the way forward with it? What do you think is going to be, what's the biggest issue we need to tackle when it comes down to smart building? Big question. You probably weren't ready for it, but I asked it. It's a Thursday afternoon for me. I'm feeling it. Dan, you can go first.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks. Yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, it comes back to end user again. So the end users using the building, they should be. If they're not the biggest user of the energy, you've got a massive problem already. If the landlord side of your building is the one using all the energy, you're in trouble. But typically they're not. It's the end user. Now the end user needs to change their behaviour. And that might mean in the future you're wearing a jumper, but we'll have a little icon with a jumper showing you exactly how much energy you're saving by wearing that jumper. And so we're all about showing the end user what the cost of energy is for the space they're using. The quick way we're doing that now is just disabling spaces. So you can't book spaces. If there's not enough critical mass on a Friday, we'll shut a space down and allow you to book a new space. So we can only enable, say, one floor of a building and take the savings there. But overridingly, it's all about communication. I think that's going to be the key to really getting the end user to understand the implications of the energy they're consuming and changing their behaviour.
Yeah, and I think just to be really simple, we're with the pandemic, we're going towards really aggressively sharing desks in office buildings, and a key component of our solution for that is, where is the nearest phone booth? Where are the desks that are free? Where are the meeting rooms free? And kind of displaying that on a map in the most simple way. And that granular utilization data around how many people in a room, our desks are occupied, is a really, really helpful tool for really questioning when energy consumption is consumed. There is a behavioral component that's really important. And Lou, we're going to have to discuss this again in another episode. You know where to find me.
100%. Yeah, in the pub. Okay, last question, guys. So this is how we are going to be ending the podcast going forward, as thanks to Eileen from behind. She was my inspiration. So Dan and Ken, we'd love to share a bit of, have a bit of fun with our audience. So you can each share what is something they won't know about you. What is your walk-up done? What's a fun, quirky fact about yourselves? We can give us a fact about smart buildings, but I don't think that's particularly fun.
Walk-in music. I'm an old school indie head, so it would be something like Doves is Pounding or Ruby 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 by Kaiser Chiefs, which those kind of happy bouncy ones. I can't dance, so jumping up in the air with my finger and pointing to the sky.
Real kids love that.
Pogoing is the best I can do with dancing.
Right. Dan, what about you?
Ooh, Unfinished Symphony, Massive Attack, maybe. I don't know. I just love that track. It's always been a favourite of mine. I used to play it on my dad's hi-fi when he used to go out when I was a kid, and literally nearly have a neighbour complaining within a quick time of putting it on and blowing his speakers. I actually blew his speakers possibly about 6 times, and my poor uncle had to solder them back together. And he's still got them now, bless him. So I suppose the other thing, I'm a hoarder. I'm definitely a hoarder, like my dad. You come into our office, despite a hot desking policy, there's a lot of messy desks, and it's typically probably a desk I've worked on the day before, and people are move the stuff. So that's my bad habit. My wife hates me for it. She's always throwing stuff away when I'm not looking. But then I've got quite a good memory, and I tend to then think, I need that particular thing. I go and ask her, and she goes, "Yep, that's in the local charity shop." And then I get quite upset about it.
You're like, but I left it on that desk 2 weeks ago. Look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on. I knew we'd have so much fun recording this. Everyone listening in, like Siemens or Honeywell, if you want to contact Ken, his details are online, and he is expecting a call. But you guys have been absolutely fabulous. Thank you for sharing with us a bit about neurodiversity, gender bias, smart building, sustainability. We've covered a lot. Those who want to learn more about Haltian and smart spaces, reach out to them. And thank you so much for joining the show. And most importantly, thank you to Dan.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks.